sure you know what they were. The phytoplankton that the krill feed on, those little tiny plants that produce every second molecule of oxygen we breathe. So now at UTS I've been looking down microscopes at some of these critters that many of you are studying for various reasons, to put together a big picture story of what's happening in the oceans. And this is set to a symphony, an excerpt from a symphony composed in response to the ocean. So this leads to, I hope you don't mind, Anne, this is a preparatory sketch that Anne did with some of the drawings that I made for that animation, and we'll see the real thing soon. But this is a project that Anne's been working on with Martina to attract attention to some very new science, using a whole new way of looking at, or looking for and looking at phytoplankton in the ocean. And this is a conversation to have with them over tea, I hope. So it's very exciting the way these images are inspiring other artists and designers, and they're taking them in all sorts of directions. I know Anne's got a particular love of the copolithophores, or the copolithophorids, those spherical forms with all the platelets on. Now just to jump on, I'm sorry to jump around, but it's a bit like that with this. The connections go, I guess, a little bit like on a matrix, Jim. I've been reading about the matrix in a book that Jim's lent me. So it's not a linear story. It's a web of connections. And this part of it is about other hubs. We describe ourselves, or we see ourselves as a hub, living data of conversations. And another hub is in Buenos Aires. It's led by an artist, Andre One, who brings together artists and scientists to do similar things that we do, but on a much larger scale. In that country, she has the full support of the Argentinian Antarctic equivalent of the Australian Antarctic Division there, and she takes artists to Argentinian Antarctic bases. Every year she takes them to Antarctica, and they create and present and perform art in situ in Antarctica, document that and bring it to the people. And alongside that are conferences, one I attended, where the scientists also talk, and they describe what's going on. Now, although this is Spanish, you might be able to recognise what this is about. It's about methane escaping as the ice melts and sea levels rise, the methane comes up into the atmosphere. Now the problem with that is it's polluting the atmosphere, but it's also the problem for us to understand what's going on as non-scientists is that it's an invisible process. So one of Andrea's pieces, so this is Andrea's response to conversations with Rodolfo Del Valle, who's the head of earth scientists at the university where she works, and she worked with other artists and scientists, and she'd taken down these coloured lengths of tulle to simulate or signify the toxic chemicals releasing through the ice. This is what I mean, like where we move, there's an awful lot going on right now, and this is a notice I just got from Andrea just 2 days ago. She's showing results of her last voyage in Barcelona, is that right? Barcelona. So we're really running fast now. It started off quite slow, but it's a massive growing movement of conversations and presentations. So this is again the 2008 exhibition, and this is showing this iconic form of the Antarctic. It's captured the attention of many artists for its resemblance to the human brain and the human body, the fetus. And these are some works that I had exhibited there in that same space, and these are, as you recognise, the phytoplankton that you see on the box. This is Philippe de Boisson, who's a French-Canadian, and he's working with this idea of Antarctica as a symbol of our conscience. And the title of this piece is En perd de nord, which means we have lost our way, we've lost our bearings. So the north being the compass. British Antarctic Survey is another organisation like the Antarctic Division that has a program that sends artists to Antarctica. And this is the result of a residency by Chris Drury. And just by accident saw this work in London in 2000. I think that's the wrong date. Completely wrong, so sorry about that. 2008, I saw that. And this is a seismograph, or a reading of the layers in the glacial ice. And it's handwritten in between each layer are the names of many of the scientists and explorers working at that time on cutting-edge science and discoveries. This is a work by David Buckland, who featured in our last show here at UTS, and I'm going to show you a walkthrough with that show very soon, and you'll recognise this perhaps in that reel. But David leads a program called the Cape Farewell Project, and he takes artists to the Arctic on scientific expeditions. Specifically, these expeditions are not led by the scientists so much as the artists. So David leads these expeditions specifically to engage artists with how scientists are modelling the future, and how can artists then respond to those stories, images, and engage the public with that. Siobhan Davies is one of the artists, one of the many artists who's been with him now, and she made this poignant piece called Endangered Species. And it's actually looks like a hologram. It's this tiny thing. It's a human form that dances in this cyclic pattern, and it moves in and out of looking like a human and looking like an insect. So it's quite a moving piece. Evelyn Collion in Canada is working with us. She's been sending work over to present in Living Data exhibitions for a couple of years now. And this is her integration. She's very interested in the commonalities between the human, or the animal, and the plant, just in terms of the form. And I was interested, Peter, in that conversation we had last year about the heme in hemoglobin and the heme in the chloroplasts, and thought, so I've had that conversation with Evelyn, and she's now gone off on some other directions with that, so it'd be interesting to see where that goes. So this is simply an IKEA light that she's hand printed on, and it illuminates, and it's just beautiful. This is work by Evelyn that she's actually doing right now as we speak. She's in Greece. She has an artist residency there, and she's working with cypress trees. And she's sanded the block of tree, and she's printed it, and she's incorporated that with that print of her own finger to make this connection again between the human animal and the plant, between us and the living world. This is another work by Andrea Juan from Buenos Aires, the Polar Project, and she calls this piece New Species. So it's, you know, it's a fantasy that, you know, perhaps this is where things are going. We're going to get these giant molecules in the Antarctic. It's also just the frontispiece for this animation, which will take you through our last exhibition here at UTS. Friends of it who went to that show, got to see that exhibition. Yeah. So you'll recognise, those of you who have worked with us will recognise your work here.